Morning. It's a supercalifragilisticexpialidocious kind of day. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. hamlet towns in Brunswick by famous Hanover City. The River Weser, deep and wide, washes its wall on the southern side. A pleasanter spot you've never spied. But when begins my ditty, almost 500 years ago, to see the townsfolk suffer so from vermin was a pity. Rats, they fought the dogs and killed the cats, bit the babies in the cradles, and ate the cheeses from the vats, and licked the soup from the cook's own ladles, split open the kegs of salted sprats, made nest the men's Sunday hats, and even spoiled the women's chats by drowning out their speaking with shrieking and squeaking in 50 different sharps and flats. At last the people in a body to the town hall came flocking. "'Tis clear," cried they, "our mayor is a naughty. And as for our corporation, shocking, to think we buy gowns lined with ermine, for dolts who can't or won't determine what's best to rid us of our vermin. You hope because you're old and obese to find in the furry civic robes ease. Rouse up, sirs, give your brains a racking, to find the remedy we are lacking, or sure as fate will send you packing." At this the mayor and corporation quaked with a mighty consternation. An hour they sat in council. At length the mayor broke silence. "For a guilder I'd my ermine gown sell. I wish I were a mile hence. It's easy to bid one rack one's brain. I'm sure my poor head aches again. I scratch it so, but all in vain. Oh, for a trap, a trap, a trap." Just he said this, what should hap? At the chamber door but a gentle tap. "Bless us," cried the mayor, "what's that?" With the corporation as he sat, looking little to wondrous fact. Nor brighter were his eyes, nor moister, than a too long opened oyster, save when at noon is plunged in muteness, or a plate of turtle green and glutinous. Only a scraping of shoes on a mat, anything like the sound of a rat makes my heart go pit-a-pat. "Come in," cried the mayor, looking bigger, and in did come the strangest figure. His long queer coat from heel to head was half yellow and half red, and he himself was tall and thin, with sharp blue eyes each like a pin, and light loose hair and swarthy skin, nor tuft of hair on cheek, nor beard on chin. But lips where smile went out and in, there was no guessing his kith or kin, and nobody could enough admire this tall man in his quaint attire. Quoth one, "It's as my great-grandsire, starting up with the trump of doom's tone, had walked this way from his painted tombstone." He advanced towards the council table, and "Please, your honor," said he, "I am able, by means of secret charm to draw all the creatures living beneath the sun, that crawl or swim or fly or run, after me so as you never saw. And I chiefly use my charm on creatures that to people harm, the mole and toad and newt and viper, and people call me the Pied Piper." And here they noticed round his neck a scarf of red and yellow stripe, to match with his coat of self-same check. And that scarf's end hung a pipe. His fingers, they noticed, were ever straying, as if impatient to be playing, upon this pipe, as low it dangled over his vesture so old-fangled. "Yes," said he, "Pied Piper as I am, in Tartary I fred the cam, last June from his huge swarms of gnats. I eased in Asia the Nizam, of a monstrous brood of vampire bats. And as for what your brain bewilders, if I rid your town of rats, will you give me 1,000 guilders?" 50,000 was the exclamation of astonished mayor and corporation. Into the street the piper stepped, smiling first a little smile, as if he knew what magic slept in his quiet pipe a while. Like a musical adept below his pipe his lips he wrinkled, and green and blue his sharp eyes twinkled, like a candle flame where salt is sprinkled. And ere 3 shrill notes the pipe uttered, you heard as if an army muttered, and a muttering grew to a grumbling, and a grumbling grew to a mighty rumbling, and out of the houses came the rats tumbling. Great rats, small rats, lean rats, brawny rats, brown rats, black rats, grey rats, tawny rats, grave old plotters, gay young friskers, fathers, mothers, uncles, cousins, cocking tails and pricking whiskers, families by tens and dozens, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, followed the Pied Piper for their lives. From street to street he piped advancing, and step for step they followed dancing, until they came to the river Weser, wherein all plunged and perished, save one who stout as Julius Caesar, swam across and lived to carry, as he the manuscript he cherished, to rat land home his commentary, which was, at first shrill notes of the pipe, I heard a sound as of scraping tripe, and putting apples wondrous ripe into the cider presses gripe, and a moving away of pickle tub boards, and leaving a jar of conserve cupboards, and a drawing the corks of train oil flasks, and a breaking the hoops of butter casks. And it seemed as if a voice sweeter far than by harp or by psalteries breathed, called out, "O rats, rejoice! The world has grown to a vast dry saltery. So munch on, crunch on, take your nunch on, breakfast, supper, dinner, lunch on, and just as a bulky sugar punch on, already staved, like a great sun shone. Gracious, scarce an inch before me, just as methought it said, come bore me, I found the Wester rolling over me." You should have heard the Hamlin people ring the bells, they rock the steeple. "Go," cried the mayor, "and get long poles, poke out the nests and block up the holes. Consult with carpenters and builders, and leave in our town not even a trace of the rats." When suddenly up the face of the piper perked in the marketplace, the first, if you please, my 1,000 guilders. 1,000 guilders! The mayor looked blue, so did the corporation too, for council dinners made rare havoc with claret, moselle, vin de gras, pop, and half the money would replenish their cellar's biggest butt of Rhenish, to pay this sum to a wondering fellow, with gypsy coat of red and yellow. Besides, quoth the mayor with a knowing wink, our business is done at the river's brink. We saw with our eyes a vermin sink, and what's dead can't come to life, I think. So, friend, we're not folks to shrink from our duty of giving you something to drink, and a matter of money to put in your poke. But as for the guilders, what we spoke of them, as you well know, wasn't joke. Besides, our losses have made us thrifty. 1,000 guilders, come, take 50. The piper's face fell, and he cried, "No trifling, I can't wait besides. I promise a visit by dinner time, Baghdad, except the prime of the head cook's potage. All he's rich in, having left in the Caleb's kitchen, of a nest of scorpions, no survivor. With him I prove no bargain driver. With you don't think I'll bait a stiver. And folks who put me in a passion, may find me pipe after another fashion." "How," cried the mayor, "do you think I crook, being worse treated than a cook, insulted by a rival, with idle pipe and vesture piping? Threaten us, fellow, do your worst, blow your pipe there till you burst." Once more he stepped into the street, and to his lips again laid his long pipe of smooth straight cane. And ere he blew 3 notes, such sweet soft notes as the musicians cunning nerve gave the enraptured air, there was a rustling that seemed like the bustling of merry crowds justling, of pitching and hustling. Small feet were pattering, wooden shoes clattering, little hands clapping, little tongues chattering, like foals in a farmyard with barley scattering. Out came the children running, all the little boys and girls, with rosy cheeks and flaxen curls, and sparkling eyes and teeth like pearls, tripping and skipping around merrily after. The wonderful music was shouting and laughter. The mayor was dumb, and the council stood as if their change the walks would, unable to move a step or cry, to the children merrily skipping by, could only follow with an eye that joyous crowd at the piper's back, and how the mayor was on the rack, and the wretched council's bosoms beat as the piper turned from the high street to where the Wester rolled its waters, right in the way of their sons and daughters. However, he turned from south to west, and to Poplarberg Hill his steps addressed, and after him the children pressed. Great was the joy in every breast. He never crossed the mighty top, his force let the piping drop, and we shall see our children stop. When lo, they reached the mountainside, a wondrous portal opened wide, as if a cavern was suddenly hollowed. The piper advanced, and the children followed. When all were in to the very last, the door in the mountainside shut fast. Did I say all? No, one was lame, and could not dance the whole of the way. And in after years, if you would blame his sadness, he was used to say, "It's dull in our town since my playmates left. I can't forget that I'm bereft of all the pleasant sights they see, which the piper also promised me. For he led, as he said, to a joyous land, joining the town and just at hand, where fruit trees grew, flowers, where waters gushed and fruit trees grew, flowers were forth of fairer hue, and everything was strange and new. The sparrow was buried a peacock here, and our dogs outran our fellow deer, and honeybees had lost their stings, and horses were born with eagle's wings. And just as I became assured my lame foot would be speedily cured, the music stopped, and I stood still, and found myself outside the hill, left behind against my will, to go now limping as before, and never hear of that country more." Alas, alas, for Hamelin, there came into many a burgher's pate a text which says at heaven's gate opes the rich at his easy rate, as a needle's eye takes a camel in. The mayor sent east, west, north, and south to offer the piper by word of mouth, wherever it was men's lot to find him, silver and gold to his heart's content, if only he'd return the way he went, and bring the children behind him. But when they saw 'twas lost endeavor, and piper and dances were gone forever, they made a decree that lawyers never should think their records dated duly, if after the day of the month and year, these words do not as well appear. And so long after what happened here, on the 22nd of July, 1376, in the better in memory to fix the place of the children's last retreat, they called it the Pied Piper Street, where anyone playing piper tabor was sure for his future lose his labor, nor suffered they hospitaller tavern, shock with mirth the street so solemn, and opposite the place of the cavern, they wrote the story on a column, and the great church window painted, the same to make the world acquainted, how their children were stolen away, and there it stands this very day. And I must not admit to say, in Transylvania there is a tribe of alien people who ascribe the way and dress of which their neighbors lay such stress to their fathers and mothers having risen out of some subterranean prison, into which they were japanned a long time ago in a mighty band, out of Hamlin towns in Brunswick land, but how or why they don't understand. So, Lily, let me and you be wipers of scores out with all men, especially pipers. And if they should pipe us free from rats and mice, if we promise not, let us keep our promise. My first thought was he lied at every word, that hoary cripple with malicious eye, askance to watch the working of his lie on mine, and mouth scarce able to afford suppression of the glee that pursed and scored its edge at one more victim gained thereby. What else should he be set for with his staff? What saved to waylay with his lies and snare all travelers who might find him posted there? And ask the road, I guessed what skull-like laugh would break, what crutch can write my epitaph of pastime in the dusty thoroughfare. If at his counsel I should turn aside into ominous track which all agree hides the dark tower, yet acquiescingly I deterred as he pointed, neither pride nor hope rekindling at the end described, so much as gladness some end might be. For what with my whole world wide wondering, what with my search drawn out through years, my hope dwindled into a ghost not fit to cope with that obstreperous joy success would bring. I hardly tried now to rebuke the spring my heart made, finding failure in its scopes. As a sick man very near to death seems dead indeed, the feels begin and end the tears, and takes the farewell of each friend, and hears one bid the other grow, draw breath, freelier outside, since all is over, he saith, and the blow fallen no grieving can amend. While some discuss if near the graves be room enough for this, and when a day suits best for carrying the corpse away, with care about banners, scarfs, and staves, and still the man hears all and only craves, he may not shame such tender love and stay. Thus I had for so long suffered in this quest, heard failure prophesied so oft being read, so many times among the band to wit, the knights who to dark tower search addressed their steps, the just to fail as they seem best, and all doubt was now should I be fit. So quiet as despair I turned from him, that hateful cripple, out of his highway into the path he pointed. All the day had been a dreary one at best, and dim was settling into its close, yet shot one grim red leer to see the plain catch its astray. For mark, no sooner was I fairly found, pledged the plain after a pace or two, then pausing for backward a last view, over the safe road 'twas gone, great plain all round, nothing but plain to the horizon's bound. I must go on, naught else remained to do. So on I went. I think I never saw such starved, ignoble nature. Nothing throve, for flowers as well expect a cedar grove, but chortle and spurge, according to their law, might propagate their kind with none to awe. You'd think a burr had been a treasure trove. No penry inert the single mace, in some strange sort were the land's portion. See or close your eyes at nature peevishly. It nothing skills, I can't help my case. 'Tis last judgment's fire must cure this place. Calcine the squads and set my prisoners free. If there pushed any ragged thistle stalk above its mates, its head was chopped. The bents were jealous else. What made the holes and rents in the dock's harsh forest leaves, bruised as do balk all hope of greenness. 'Tis a brute must walk, passion the life out with the brute's intense. As for the grass, it grew as scarce as hair in leprosy. Thin, dry blades pricked the mud, which underneath looked beaded up with blood. One stiff, blind horse, as every bone a stare, stood stupefied however he came there, thrust out past service from the devil's stud. Alive, he might be dead for aught I know, with red, gaunt, and calloped neck astrain, and shut eyes beneath the rusty mane. Seldom went such grotesqueness with such woe. I never saw a brute I hated so. He must have been wicked to deserve such pain. I shut my eyes and turned them on my heart. As a man calls for wine before he fights, I asked one draught of earlier, happier sights. Ere fitly I could hope to play the part. Think first, fight afterwards, a soldier's art. One taste of old time sets all to rights. Not it. I fancied Cuthbert's reddening face beneath its garniture of curly gold. Dear fellow, till I almost felt him fold an arm in mine to fix me to that place that way he used. Alas, one night's disgrace. Oh, at my heart's new fire and left it cold. Giles, then, the soul of honor, there he stands, frank as 10 years ago when knighted first. An honest man should dare he durst, good but a seamship. What hangman's hand pinned to his breast a parchment, his own band reads it, poor traitor spit upon and cursed. Better this present than a past like that, back therefore to my darkening path. No sound, no sight as far as the eye can strain. Will the night send a howlet or a bat, I asked, when something on the dismal flat came to arrest my thoughts and change their train. A sudden little river crossed my path, as unexpected as a serpent came, through ties congenial to the glooms. This as it frothed by might have been a bath of beam glowing hoop, to see the wrath of its black eddies be spat with plates and spoons. So petty yet so spiteful, all along low scrubby alders kneeled over it, drenched willows flung them headlong in a fit of rout despair, a suicidal throng, the river which had done them all the wrong, whatever that was, rolled by, deterred no whit. which while I forded, good saints, how I feared to set my foot upon a dead man's cheek. Each step or feel with fear I pressed to seek, for hollows tangled in his hair or beard. It may have been a water rat I speared, but ugh, it sounded like a baby's shriek. Glad was I to reach the other bank, now for a better country. Vain presage, who are the strugglers? What war did they wage? Whose savage trample could thus pad the dank soil to a plash? Toads in a poison tank, wild cats in a red-hot cage. The fight must so have seemed in that foul cirque. What penned them there with all the plain to choose? No footsteps leading to that horror's muse. None out of it. Mad brewers set to work their brains, no doubt, like galley slaves and Turks pits for his pastime, Christians against Jews. And more than that, a furlong on, why there, what bad use was that engine for, that wheel, or brake, not wheel, that harrow fit to reel men's bodies out like silk, with all the air of Tophet's tool, on earth left unaware, or brought to sharpen its rusty teeth of steel. Then came some stub ground, once a wood, next a marsh it would seem, now mere earth, desperate and done with, so the fool finds mirth, makes the thing and mars it, till his mood changes and off he goes, within a rude bog, clay and marsh, sand and stark black dirt. Now blotches rankling color gay and grim, now patches bristliness of the soils, broken to moss of substances like boils. Then came a palsied oak, a cleft in him, a distorted mouth that splits its rim, gaping at death and dies while it coils. As far as ever from the end, not in the distance but the evening not, point my footsteps further at the thought, great black bird, Apollyon's bosom friend, sailed past, or beat his wide wings dragon-penned, and brushed my cap, perchance the guide I sought. From looking up where I somehow grew, the plain had given place all round to mountains with such names to grace mere heights and heaps now stolen in view. How thus they surprised me solving you, how to get from there was no clear case. Yet half I seemed to recognize some trick of mischief had happened to me, God knows when, in a bad dream perhaps, here ended then progress this way, when in the very nick of giving up one more time, came a click, as when the trap shuts you're in the den. Burningly it came upon me all at once, this was the place, those two hills crouched like two bulls on morning fight, while to the left, tall Scout Mountain, Dunt's daughter, dozing at the very nuts, after a lifetime training for the sight. Not see what in the midst lay but the tower itself, the round squat turret, blind as a fool's heart, built of brown stone without a counterpart in the whole world. The tempest's mocking elf points the shipman thus, the unseen shelf he strikes on only when timbers start. Not see, because of night perhaps, why day came back for that. Behind it left the dying sunset kindled through a cleft. The hills like two giants in the hunting lay, chin upon hand to see the game at bay. Now stab and end the creature to the heft. Not here, when noise was everywhere, it told, increasing like a bell, names in my ears of lost adventurers, my peers. How such was strong and such was bold, and such was fortunate, yet each of old, lost, one moment now the woe of years. There they stood, ranged along the hillside met, to view the last of me, for one more picture in a sheet of a living frame, for one more picture in a sheet of flame. I saw them and knew them all, and yet, dauntless, the slughorn to my lips I set and blew. Child roll into a dark tower came. This is the story of Roland Pide and the Oven Blade. There was once a young man named Roland Pide who played the recorder when he wasn't baking bagels. One day he was walking through a park and playing his recorder to rest a while from all his baking, when suddenly he spied a corpse lying on the ground beneath a swarm of flies. He put down his recorder, walked over to the corpse, shooed the flies away, and covered the dead man with stones. Returning to his oven later that day, he found that his oven blade had gone on by itself and already baked half the bagels he needed to bake. From that day on, Roland Pide was the happiest baker alive. He would bake until he was tired. Then he'd pull his recorder out of his pocket while his oven blade went on by itself. But Roland Pide lived in a town whose mayor did not admire his skill and was jealous of his fame. So the mayor devised a plan to rid the town of Roland. In the beginning, he said that Roland was a good worker, but lazy. Next, he said that Roland baked a whole lot, but badly. Then he accused Roland of being a sorcerer, and the people turned on him. Roland therefore took his recorder and left his home behind. When Roland came to a neighboring town, he went to all the business owners, but none of them would give him any work. Finally, he met an old busker and asked him for work to keep his body and mind together. "Come along with me," said the old man, "and we will share alms." So Roland Pide and the old man started going around and singing, "Baker, why do you bear those silent things? Baker, how did you forget to stand where your feet are? Baker, no woman loves your wealth, although it is golden and good for her health. Baker, you are too dirty for a lover to wish to preen. Your limbs are the knots and cords of an old-fashioned machine. Baker, line the rings and bash the boards. You don't need their applause for a thing that is yours. You are a baker and are what you are, not by a miracle, but by the work of your arms. Baker, stand where your feet are." Everybody gave alms to the old man, but to Roland Pide they said, "What is a young man like you out begging? Why don't you work for a living?" "Nobody will hire me," replied Roland Pide. "That's what you say. There's a king with so many hungry soldiers that he'll pay good wages to anyone willing to feed them." So Roland Pide went to the king's kitchen and took the old man whose alms he'd been sharing. The oven had never been used by anyone. Roland mixed the dough, rolled it into rings. Then he boiled it, dressed them with seeds, baked them until they were golden brown. Then he tossed them into a crate to cool down. Whenever Roland wearied of baking, he would play his recorder, and once he was weary of playing his recorder, he would sing, "Baker, why do you bear those silent things? Baker, how did you forget to stand where your feet are? Baker, no woman loves your wealth, although it is golden and good for health. Baker, you are too dirty for a lover to wish to preen. Your limbs are the knots and cords of an old-fashioned machine. Baker, line the rings and bash the boards. You don't need their applause for a thing that is yours. You are a baker and are what you are, not by a miracle, but by the work of your arms. Baker, be he you are. Hearing the singing, a princess looked out the window. She saw Roland Pide and fell in love with him. But she was a princess, and he a baker. The king would never consent to their marriage. So they decided to run away together. They fled at night in a boat. When they're already on the high seas, Roland remembered the busker. He said to his beloved, "We must fetch the old man, since he shared alms with me. We can't go off and leave him like that." At that, the old man came up behind the boat, walking on the water as though it had been dry land. Reaching the boat, he said, "We agreed to share everything we had, and I shared everything I owned. We agreed to divide everything we had, and I shared everything I owned. Now you have the king's daughter. You must give half of her to me." At this he gave Roland Pide a knife to cut his bride in half. Roland Pide took the knife with a trembling hand. "You are right," he said. "You are perfectly right." He was on the point of cutting his bride in half in two, when suddenly the old man stopped him. "Stop! I knew you were a just man. I am the dead man whom you buried with stones, mind you. Go now, may the two of you always be happy." The old man walked away on the waves. The boat came to an island rich in all good things, with a princely palace awaiting the newlyweds.